Céad Míle Fáilte. Welcome to the 6th episode in the Dunmore Druid Order series on the legends of Ireland. I'm the narrator and commentator for the show, Ben McStefan, and I look forward to walking with you through the deep places of Irish legend. We like to say that our show comes out roughly monthly. Each show, we present one of the old stories of Ireland and talk about its meaning. If you like what you hear, comment, subscribe, or post on the Dunmore blog that links to the podcast. You can also subscribe to our channel on YouTube under the Dunmore Druid Order. The Dunmore Druid Order is accessible via Facebook, and we have some very exciting classes coming up here in the beautiful mountains of Colorado on Druidry, and we'll be posting dates and times on our Facebook page shortly. So keep a sharp eye out for those announcements. In the meantime, if you have any stories from Irish tradition that you would like us to consider for a future show, please post your suggestions on the Dunmore Druid Order Facebook page. We are going to start a new tradition on this roughly monthly show and highlight a charity that we believe to be of value in these interesting times. For this show, we would like to direct your attention to the important cause of restoring the forests of Scotland. Founded by the very hard-working Alan Watson, his organization, Trees for Life, is dedicated to restoring and protecting Scotland's rich forest habitats. We will post links to his YouTube videos so you can learn more about his important organization. Or if you're really impatient, you can go right now while you're listening to their website at www.treesforlife.org.uk, where you can learn more about their amazing projects and, most importantly, donate. Or, if you are lucky enough to live in Scotland, you have the added opportunity to volunteer. We guarantee that supporting this cause will bring you the blessings of the fair folk. So, let's get on with the storytelling. We continue with our series on the many-skilled lord of the Sidhe, Lugh Lámhfada. We have come to the story of Lugh's second fosterage with the ancient, wise, and mysterious lord of the sea, Manannán Mac Lir. We will tell of his visit to the arrogant Irish king Aodh Dubh O'Donnell and his visit to one of Ireland's wisest kings, Cormac Mac Airt. We will end this month's show with the story of Manannán's fosterage to Lugh, bringing us to the end of Lugh's childhood. Relax and walk with us into the memory of Ireland. Many years ago, there was a king. In those days, the winds were sweet and pure. The stars so bright at night you could read beneath them, and the forests so plentiful that they held dominion over the lands above the sea. This king was named Aodh Dubh O'Donnell, and he was holding a feast in his great hall in Béal Ashonach. Like all kings, he held feasts, and on this particular night, his dun was filled with nobles and warriors who soothed his lordly ego by praising the king's marvelous hall and excellent musicians. Each person was dressed in their best finery, but none more than Aodh Dubh O'Donnell. But as the nobles heaped the king with praise, a man emerged from the shadows of the dun. As he emerged into the firelight, all they could see was a fool. Old striped clothes he had, and as he walked, puddle water squished from his shoes. Around his waist, a sword was tied haphazardly, but with no scabbard. A few of the nobles jumped aside as he walked forward for fear of getting cut by the naked blade. Over all this mess, he wore a cloak that smelled sharply of rotting seaweed, and through 2 holes in the hood, his ears poked through like shelled oysters. In one hand, he held 3 spears of holly, each rough, scorched, and blackened. His appearance was distasteful and thoroughly unwelcome. The hall grew quiet, and all eyes turned to the clown, who answered their stares with a quick, broad smile. Quick as a shot, the fool turned his face to O'Donnell, and with a grand gesture he raised an invisible glass to the king and gave a toast. Sláinte go síl agat, O'Donnell. Slanchawai, the king replied, raising his glass slightly. From where have you come? It is where I am, the clown replied. The hall was silent, unsure of the strange reply by an even stranger man. Suddenly the clown popped forward. I slept last night at Dunmoney of the King of Alban. I am a day in Kintyre, a day in Rochlin, and a day in the watchman's seat in Sliugh Gwilin. A pleasant, rambling, wandering man am I. He turned his glittering eyes to O'Donnell and finished, and it is with yourself I am now, O'Donnell. O'Donnell turned to a warrior near him and said quietly and angrily, Let the gatekeeper be brought to me. And off sped the warrior, hearing the fire in O'Donnell's voice. The gatekeeper was escorted meekly into the room and stood before the king. He was asked sternly by O'Donnell if he had been the one who had let the vagrant inside. But the gatekeeper swore he had not, and that he had in fact never seen the fool before. With a laugh, the clown stepped to the gatekeeper's side, placed his arm around him and said, Let him off, O'Donnell, and grabbed a cup from a nearby nobleman, placed the drink in the gatekeeper's trembling hands, and excused him from the room. He turned to O'Donnell, meeting the fire in the king's eyes, and said, For it was as easy for me to come in as it will be for me to go out again. There was wonder on all the nobles, ladies, and warriors, for it was well known that no one could enter the dun of Aodh O'Donnell without passing the gate. The bards, feeling the tension of the king, began playing their music again. All the best musicians in O'Donnell's country were there that night, and they played sweet tunes on their gilded harps. But as they began to play, the stranger clapped his hands loudly over his ears and began to stumble around the room. Ah! He cried out, and as if talking over a great clamor instead of listening to sweet music, he yelled out, By my word, O'Donnell, there was never a noise of hammers beating on iron in any bad place, and was so bad to listen to as this noise your people are making. Now in those days, to insult the bards of the king was to insult the king himself. And seeing the rising fury on O'Donnell's face, the room went quiet once more. With that, the stranger leapt forward, took a harp from the hands of one of the bards, sat on a low stool, and began to play. The music he made and the sound of his deep voice astonished them. So sweet, so moving was his music, that women in childbirth or warriors bleeding from battle would have been lulled into the deepest sleep. Time stood still as the fool played. The world around them was hushed and quiet. Their hearts were filled with visions of vast groves of apple trees, blue skies, clear laughter, glorious dawns, and quiet twilights. When his song had ended, there was only an astonished silence. After a few moments, those assembled woke from their dream and looked at O'Donnell. Since I first heard talk of the music of the Sidhe, that is played in the hills and under the earth below us, I never heard better music than your own, and it is a very sweet player you are, he said. One day I am sweet, another day I am sour, said the fool. Greed began to take hold of O'Donnell's mind. O'Donnell knew if he could keep this vagrant, he would possess the greatest musician in all of Ireland. His fame would grow, and with that, his wealth. He turned magnanimously to everyone in the hall and called for his slaves to bring a chair so the fool would have a seat of honor next to his own. The assembled nobles clapped and cheered, but the fool was silent. I have no mind to do that, the stranger said. I would sooner be as I am, an ugly clown, making sport for high-minded people like yourselves. And he gave a deep bow. But O'Donnell was unmoved, and next ordered a set of new clothes for the vagrant to replace his worn and dirty attire. But again, the fool refused. "I have no mind to let high-up people be making a boast of giving them to me," he answered. O'Donnell grew afraid that the clown would leave regardless of his gifts. But as that fear gnawed at him, it turned slowly into anger. He assembled 20 armed horsemen and 20 armed footmen and stationed them outside the gate to keep the stranger from leaving his hall, for he knew that the stranger had come from the other world. The fool laughed. "What are these men for?" "They are to keep you here." "By my word, it is not with you I will be eating my supper tomorrow, but at Cracania with Shehan, son of the Earl." O'Donnell's patience was at an end. "If I find you stirring one stir out of yourself between this and morning, I will knock you into a round lump there on the ground," said O'Donnell in a rage. The vagrant only smiled and took up his harp. He played the liquid music of the Sidhe as before. In the stupor of its beauty, the crowd fell silent again, lost in the dreams that time cannot touch. In a voice that seemed to echo like a feather in the sky, he called to the guards at the gate, "Here I am coming, and watch me well now, or you will lose me." When the men at the gate heard this voice, they ran into the hall with their axes raised. But beneath the powerful stupor of the music of the Sidhe, it was each other that they hacked and cut. And before long, they all lied stretched on the ground in pools of their own blood. Then the fool, still tickling the silver strings of his harp, called the trembling gatekeeper to him, waking him with the power of his voice, but keeping him from the spell of the music. "You will ask 20 cows and 100 of free land from the mighty O'Donnell as a fee for bringing his warriors back to life." He took a small vial of herbs from his shirt and handed it to the lowly gatekeeper. "Take this herb and rub it in the mouth of each man of them, and he will rise up whole and well again." When the stranger stopped playing, O'Donnell, the nobles, the ladies, and the warriors gave a great cry of dismay and fear as they saw the grisly scene of the guards lying dead and slaughtered at their feet. The gatekeeper walked, with a quick glance at the fool, to O'Donnell's throne and spoke. "I can bring them back to life, O king." He shook as he spoke, but he could see the stranger smiling at him from the shadows, and it strengthened his spirit. "In return, I ask only 20 cows and 100 of free land in return." O'Donnell laughed, as did everyone else, all so certain that the gatekeeper was drunk. "Fine. You may have the cows and the 100 of land, if you do so." Without speaking, the gatekeeper stepped forward and began to rub the herb in the mouths of the dead. One by one, to the astonishment of all who saw it, the gaping wounds closed and their blood ceased to flow. Each of the warriors stood as if recovering from a strange sleep. O'Donnell had no choice. He gave the cows and the land to the lowly gatekeeper, and the gatekeeper and his descendants lived well from that time forward. As to the clown, they looked high and low, but true to his word, he had vanished just as easily as he had appeared. But Manannan was not the same with every king. To those rulers who value truth above all, he gives gifts. So it was with Ireland's greatest king, Cormac Mac Airt. Cormac of the long beard stood one day on the lawns of Chawr Nari, the hill of Tara. He stood alone, looking over the timeless beauty of Meath, when he saw a man walking toward him. He was armed, quiet, and with high looks. He wore a shirt, ribbed with gold thread next to his skin, broad shoes of white bronze between his feet and the soft grass. But even more astonishing were the sounds that washed from him. Over his shoulder, the stranger held a shining branch of silver with 9 apples of red gold. As the man walked, the branch shook with each step, and the music that it made instantly drove want, trouble, and fatigue from Cormac's spirit. The stranger stopped and stood before Cormac, and the 2 men greeted one another. When Cormac asked where he had come from, the stranger replied, "I come from a country where there is nothing but truth, where there is neither age nor withering, no heaviness, no sadness, no jealousy, no envy, no pride." Cormac looked with sadness on the stranger. "It is not so with us. I would be well pleased to have your friendship." The stranger smiled. "I am well pleased to give it." Cormac's eyes drifted to the branch. Such a treasure that brought healing to the spirit enticed him, and without realizing he was speaking, Cormac said, "Give me your branch, along with your friendship." "I will give it, if you will give me 3 gifts I ask in return." Feeling the magic of the silver branch with golden apples, Cormac did not hesitate. "I will give them to you indeed." Without a word, the stranger handed him the branch and walked away. When Cormac returned to the Hall of Kings, there was breathless wonder on all who beheld the impeccable craftsmanship of the silver branch. Cormac Mac Airt walked to his throne, sat down, and shook the branch. The people gasped, as their hearts began to soften and their eyes closed. Like feathers falling gently to the earth, each of those who heard the music of the silver branch fell into a deep, untroubled sleep from that moment until the same time the next day. And so it went. Whenever his people were in distress or hardship, Cormac would call his people to the Hall of Kings, shake the silver branch, and watch their suffering melt as the music of the Sidhe covered them like a mantle. 1 year later, the man with gray hair and high looks came back. He asked Cormac for the first of the 3 gifts promised in return for the silver branch. "You will get it," says Cormac, true to his word. "I will take your daughter, Alia, today," says the stranger. The people were shocked, and Cormac's heart sank. So the stranger brought the girl away with him. The women of Ireland gave 3 loud keens after the king's daughter as she was led away into the fog. 1 moon later, the stranger came again, and he brought Cormac's boy, Carabra Lifacar, away with him. But this time, after losing another child, Cormac couldn't bring himself to shake the branch. There was crying and lamenting without end in Chawr that night. No one ate or slept under the weight of their grief. At last, when Cormac could no longer bear the sorrow himself, he shook the silver branch until he fell asleep with everyone else. On the next moon, when the stranger appeared, he was not welcome but feared. Cormac, despite what had already happened, welcomed the stranger and asked him what he wanted. "It is your wife, Enya, I am asking this time." And so he went away, bringing the queen with him. But Cormac could no longer bear his sorrow. In total desperation he ran after them, and such was the loyalty of his people that they ran with him. In the middle of the plain of the wall, a thick mist enveloped them, and when it was gone, Cormac found himself alone and on a wide plain. he saw a shining dun in the middle of that plain. It was surrounded by a wall of bronze, and inside was a house of white silver, whose roof was thatched with the wings of swans. Surrounding the house of white silver was a great troop of warriors. But this troop of riders held no weapons, only bundles of swan wings in their arms. They climbed from their horses to the top of the house of white silver and began to thatch it with the broad white wings they held. Just as they finished thatching, and the last rider had climbed down back onto the horse, a strong wind came and blew the wings far away into the sky. When Cormac entered the walls of the dun, he saw a man kindling a fire. He watched as the tired man strained and threw a single thick trunk of oak on the fire with a thud. The man left and walked a great distance to find another tree, straining beneath its weight. But by the time the man returned with the second tree, the first was in ashes and the coals were cold. Something about the scene disturbed the wise king. He turned away and said to himself, "I will be looking at you no longer, for there is no one here to tell me your story, and I think I could find good sense in your meanings if I understood them." But his wife and children were nowhere to be found, so he left the dun and continued his search. Some time later he came to another dun. This one was very large and royal and had another wall of shining bronze around it. 4 circular houses were within its walls, but one of them, in the center, was the greatest of all. It was constructed with great beams of bronze, walls of pure silver, and thatched in the white wings of swans. Near its entrance was something Cormac Mac Airt had only heard of in legend. On the green lawn there was a shining well, and 5 streams flowing from that well. Arrayed around it, tall, proud, and many-trunked, were the most magnificent, purple-hued hazel trees Cormac had ever laid eyes on. Without knowing how, Cormac knew, with every bone and every vein, that these were the 9 hazels of Buin. He stared at their immortal beauty, and as he stared, he saw a hazelnut drop with a melodious plunk into its cold, clear waters. Pulled by the enchantment that cannot be named, Cormac walked quickly to the edge of the well and saw it floating on the surface of deep waters whose bottom he could not see. As the hazelnut fell, one of 5 many-hued salmon darted upward, snatched the hazelnut, and rose into the air, shining and glinting in the light of the sun. At the sight of the gleaming salmon, all the Sidhe who stood near fell to their knees and bowed their heads. The salmon broke the husk and gulped down the soft white flesh of the nut, sending the broken husk floating down one of the 5 streams. It was then that the music of the 5 streams broke upon Cormac's mind like a wave of bliss. During the rest of his life, Cormac never heard such exquisite music as he did that day from the pulsing waters of Conla's well. But the memory of his wife and children urged him on. He went into the royal house and found a man and a woman. Very tall they both were, dressed in clothes of many hues that moved and shifted in the light that seemed to come from all around the massive hall. The man was beautiful of shape, gray of beard and hair, with eyes and face that gave joy to those he looked on. The woman who sat next to him redefined beauty for Cormac from that day forward. She excelled all the women in all the world with her bright, clear form, having long yellow hair and an exquisite gold helmet that only accented her loveliness. Before their thrones was a wide, deep bath. As Cormac came closer, he saw heated stones going in and out of the water on their own, with no hands guiding or arms lifting them. Without shame or fear of judgment, Cormac stood before the king and the queen, stripped the clothes from his body, and eased himself into the hot water of the bath. As Cormac washed, his heart grew light, his spirit grew young, and he surrendered to the deepest peace he had ever known. In truth, Cormac could have stayed in the warm waters of the bath forever, but he heard a voice of pure beauty and grace call him from his reverie. It was the tall queen who spoke to the tall, gray-haired king. "Rise up, man of the house, for this is a comely traveler that has come to us, and if you have one kind of food or meat better than another, let it be brought in." Cormac stepped from the waters and was dressed and dried by hands he could not see. The gray-haired king rose and said, "I have but 7 pigs, but I could feed the whole world from them. For the pig that is killed and eaten today, you will find it alive again tomorrow." Another man came into the hall then, having an axe in his right hand, a log in his left hand, and a pig following behind him. And the gray-haired king said, "It is time to make ready," and turning towards Cormac said, "For we have a high guest with us today." The man struck the pig and killed it. He cut the logs and made a fire and put the pig in a cauldron. After a time, the gray-haired king looked to the cook and said, "It is time for you to turn it." The cook smiled and said, "There would be no use doing that, for never and never will the pig be boiled until a truth is told over every quarter of it." "Then let us tell yours first," said the gray-haired king. And the cook spoke. "One day I found another man's cow in my land, and I brought them with me into my little cattle pound. The owner of the cows followed me and said he would give me a reward to let the cows go free, so I gave them back to him, and he gave me this axe. When a pig is to be killed, it is with the axe it is killed. The log is cut with it. There is always enough wood to cook the pig, and always enough for the hall besides, and that is not all. For the log is found whole again in the morning, and from that time till now, that is the way they are." "It is true indeed, that story is," said the gray-haired king. They turned the pig in the cauldron then, and found 1/4 of the pig cooked. "Let us tell another truth," said the cook. Then the gray-haired king spoke. "I will tell one. Plowing time had come, and when we had a mind to plow the field outside, that is the way we found it. Plowed, harrowed, and sowed with wheat. When we had a mind to reap it, the wheat was found in the haggard, all in one thatched rick. We have been using it from that day to this, and it is no bigger and no less." Then they turned the pig once more, and another quarter was found to be cooked. Then the pearled-voiced queen spoke. "It is my turn now. I have 7 cows and 7 sheep, and the milk of the 7 cows would satisfy the whole of the world if they were in the plain drinking it. And it is enough for all the people of the land of promise. It is from the wool of the 7 sheep all the clothes they wear are made." And at that story, the 1/3 of the quarter of the pig was cooked. And Cormac spoke. "If these stories are true, you are Manannán, son of Lir, and you are Manannán's wife, fond. For no one in the whole ridge of the world owns these treasures but you. For as the bards relate, it was to the land of promise that Manannán went to look for Fond, and he obtained 7 cows with her." Cormac's heart overwhelmed him, and tears began to spill down his cheek. He told them of his wife, and his son, and his daughter, and how they had all been brought away from him, and how he himself had followed them till he came to their hall. With that truth, the whole of the pig was cooked. They cut it up, and Cormac's share was placed before him. But before he ate, even though famished from his long journey, he stopped, looked up at his hosts, and said, "I never had a meal yet with only 2 people at my table." The cook smiled at Cormac and began to sing. There was a strange quality to his song that soothed Cormac's troubled mind, and he fell asleep right there where he sat. When he awoke, he found himself sitting at a long table with 50 warriors, and next to him was his son, Carabra, his wife, Enya, and his daughter, Alia. With that sight, tremendous joy burst from Cormac's heart. leaping like a salmon going home. Food and ale were given to all, and Cormac feasted on pure bliss. In the midst of the revelry, Cormac looked to the head of the table and saw Manannan. In his hand, Manannan held a golden cup of such stunning beauty and workmanship that Cormac had never seen its equal. Manannan saw Cormac's eyes lingering on the cup and raised his hand, and the room went silent. "There is a stranger thing yet about it," said Manannan. "When 3 lying words are spoken under it, it will break into 3. When 3 truths are spoken under it, it will be as good as it was before." So Manannan spoke 3 lies. It broke into 3 pieces and fell onto the table. "It is best to speak truth now under it and mend it. I give my word, Cormac, that until today, neither your wife or your daughter has seen the face of a man since they were brought away from you out of Chawarnari. And your son has never seen the face of a woman." And with those words, the cup was whole again. "Bring away your wife and your children with you now, and this cup with them. In this way, you will have it for judging between truth and untruth. And I will leave the branch with you for music and delight. On the day of your death, they will be taken from you again. I myself am Manannán Mac Lir, king of the land of promise, and I brought you here by enchantments that you might be with me tonight in friendship. The riders you saw thatching the house are the men of arts and poets, and all that look for a fortune in Ireland, putting together cattle and riches. For when they go out, all that they leave in their houses goes to nothing, and so they go on forever. And the man you saw kindling the fire is a young lord that is more liberal than he can afford, and everyone else is served while he is getting the feast ready, and everyone else profits at his expense. And the well you saw is the well of knowledge, and the streams are the 5 streams through which all knowledge goes. And no one will have knowledge who does not drink a draught out of the 5 streams or the well itself. The people of many arts are those who drink from the streams and the well." In the morning, when Cormac awoke, he found himself on the green of Chawr, along with his wife, his daughter, and his son. In each hand, he held the silver branch and the golden cup. It would eventually be named as Cormac's cup, and it was used to judge between truth and falsehood. On the day of Cormac's death, the silver branch and the golden cup disappeared, just as Manannan had foretold. Very little is told of the time that Lugh spent with his foster father, Manannán Mac Lir. Lugh disappeared from Ireland altogether after Tailtu's death, and he was taken to Aodh, the land of apples. There, Lugh and the sons of Manannan led a joyous life in wild places, forests alive with game, lakes and rivers full of fish, and currachs surrounded with waterfowl. So they hunted the red deer in the green woods and the wolf on the mountain. The sound of their hunting horns and the baying of their hounds made music in the dark forest and winding glen, and floated over tall mountains purple with heather and golden with gorse. During this time he learned how to fight and use weapons of all kinds, astonishing his teachers with his effortless acquisition of new skills. He learned to hunt, skin, swim, run, and fish. They would often put out to sea in Manannán's boat, Wave Sweeper, which carried them wherever they wished, without sail or oar. They climbed the dizzying heights of the mountains of the other world and took a few young falcons from their nests. The Hall of Manannan was an important place for Lugh. When the sun was shining on the summer sea, the hall sparkled like a jewel above the clear, green water. And when the sunset was blazing behind it, and the red cliffs across the bay were flowing with color, it seemed to float like a cloud on a radiance of crimson and gold. Around it, white gulls rested on the water as if they were asleep, or circled around it on flashing wings. At all times, the Hall of Manannan was fairer to Lugh than words could tell. During the winter, when it was summer in Ireland, when the angry sea, gray and misty, surged against the cliffs of Manannán's home, the wind shrieked and whistled, and the waves outside flew high above hard rock, bursting in masses of white spray, hundreds of feet in the air. The people of Aodh gathered around a wide hearth, with the roar of the vast sea around them. During these days, they would hear the bards telling the stories that contain all the wisdom and incomprehensible beauty of the Sidhe. Here, Lugh learned to play the three forms of music: the laughing tune, the sleeping tune, and the weeping tune, which made those that listened laugh, sleep, or weep as he wished. He was taught to write in Ogham and the immortal rules of poetry. All these skills he learned with a swiftness and sureness that astounded them all. Occasionally, from the shores of Aodh, Lugh would catch a glimpse of Ireland, far away. He thought of his mother, Ellen, his father, Cian, and his beloved foster mother, Telchu. But one day, when he looked over Ireland, something had changed. He felt a distant sense of dread. As the feeling grew, he found, suddenly, that his foster father was standing at his side. Manannan, with his eyes that can pierce any mist and see any distance, beheld the Fosterage warring against the people of Danu and the Firwalach, enslaving them, making themselves masters over them, and he knew that his foster son could feel their distress too. He turned to Lugh Lámhfada. "Go to the rescue of your people. We can teach you nothing more. The Fosterage are ancient, fierce, and cruel. But I will send you against them, prepared as one of your rank should be." True to his word, Manannán Mac Lir didn't send Lugh away empty-handed. Lugh wore Manannán's coat. Those who wear it cannot be wounded. His breastplate, which no weapon can pierce. His helmet, with two precious stones set in front, and one behind, that flash when the wearer moves. Manannán gave Lugh his own deadly sword, Frogarach, Answerer. Those it wounds never recover. Those who see it are so overcome with terror they lose their strength altogether. No one can tell a lie or even move with Frogarach at their throat, thus its name, Answerer. It places the wind at your command and can cut through any shield or wall. He rode Manannán's horse, Eanwer, who can travel over land or sea as swiftly as the wind. And also his foster brothers went with him, and away they traveled over the stormy sea to Ireland. It was time to leave the carefree life of Aodh behind and come of age. Lugh alone was the child of the three peoples, his father's people, the Tuatha Dé Dannan, his mother's people, the primordial Fosterage, and his foster mother's people, the steadfast Firwalach. It was finally time to attempt to save the fairy tribes of Ireland from the wrath and oppression of the overwhelming power of his grandfather, Balor of the Evil Eye. Thank you for joining us again. Next episode will be our commentary episode for the three tales we told today. If you like what you heard today, feel free to comment on the YouTube video or the comments on the Dunmore website that hosts the podcast. Gura mila mahigit to our producer and editor, Arlene Hall, and to our technical advisor, Dave Franklin. And also a huge thank you to Studio 21C and the Pikes Peak Library District. Until then, walk with your feet firmly on the breathing earth, your head in the clouds, and a song in your heart. Slán go fóill.